right? Um, let's talk about it in detail about selecting the right applicant, since it's also important. So you screen all the applications. How do you decide which applicant to rent to?
Well, again, we don't actually make that decision. We don't sit there with all the applications side by side and say, okay, I think this one is the best applicant. Let's approve this person. We qualify them and we go through them in order that they apply. Well, let me qualify that in the order that we receive a complete application. So if they fill out the application, but they haven't provided all the supporting documentation we need, we'll move on to the next application. But again, it's the first applicant that provides us a complete application packet with all the supporting documentation and everything. It's the first one that's qualified that we rent to.
Right. How important is a tenant's rental history in the decision-making process?
Yeah, that's one of the main things that we look for. I mean, if they move every 6 months or a year, that's a red flag as well. If we look at the credit report and it lists a dozen different addresses, that's a red flag. I see credit reports all the time that have different addresses, and then they'll give me their current address and it's not even on their credit report. That's a red flag. So rental history is one of the key things that I look for. How long were they at their current property? Why are they moving? Do they need a bigger house? Are they, moving? Is their job moving them from one side of the city to the other? So they need to be closer to their job. All of those things that we look at, but rental history, yes, for sure. If they move into a property and then within a year they're moving to another property, I'm not saying they won't be qualified, but they certainly wouldn't be my best choice. If they've been in their property for 5, 6, 10 years, and that's a repeated pattern, then sure, I'd love to rent to that person.
Yes, you're looking. It seems you're looking for tenants that stay more than a year in the property.
For sure.
That you don't have to go with the same cycle every year.
Right. Yeah, and that helps the landlords as well because it costs money every time a tenant moves out. You've got to prepare the property again for rent. You've got to cover the utilities while the property is vacant. You've got to start the whole process over as far as screening tenants and our applicants. You've got to screen it. You've got to market the property. You've got to find the applicants. You've got to screen the applicants. You've got to go through the whole education process again. So it takes a lot of time and money to turn over a property. So if you can do that once every 5 years, that's a much better system than if you have to do it every year for every property.
Right. References. What role do references play in assessing an applicant's being suitable to rent the property?
Honestly, for me, I don't put that much weight on the references. And I say that because, again, they're going to give you the name and number of whoever's going to paint the best picture of them. So, and this is personal references. This isn't necessarily talking about, contacting previous landlords. This is personal references. Yes, I contact them and yes, I talk to them. But again, I don't put as much weight on that as I would on their rental history, their employment history, those kinds of things. And as far as previous landlords, yes, we contact their current residents, landlord, as well as their past, but I put more weight on what their previous landlord tells me than their current. And I say that because if they're a terrible tenant, their current landlord is going to tell you, oh, they're great. That way they'll be approved and they'll move out of their property. If they are a good tenant, they'll tell me, oh, they're great. So you're going to get the same answer either way from their current landlord. So I put more weight on the previous landlord. If they moved out of somebody else's property 2 years ago, that person is going to tell me the truth. Oh, they tore up my place. They were always late on their rent. I would never rent to them again. And that's a question I always ask. If this person applied to your property right now, would you rent to them?
Right. Let's talk about the finances. how do you analyze the finance of the possible tenant? Do they have to have all the money for the deposit, and how much income do they need to make based on the rental payment?
Our requirement is 3 times the rent for income. So if the rent is, $1,500 a month, as an example, they would need to have at least $4,500 a month income. And that's combined. If it's a husband and wife, for instance, combined, they need to have $4,500 a month in income. We also look at credit score, but again, that plays a less role than the amount of income. So we verify that. They fill it out on the application. We verify it through pay stubs, and we also verify it through checking their bank accounts for deposits. And then if there's questions or if red flags come up, we could even ask for tax returns, for instance, to verify their income. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure that they're able to afford the rent when they move into the property. As an example, I had someone just apply for a property, and it was a fairly lower priced property. It was $1,200 a month, but her income was only $3,500 a month, and she had just bought a new car the month prior, and her car payment was $800 a month. She's barely going to be able to afford the rent based on the amount of income that she's got coming in and her car payment. Much less being able to buy groceries and gas and insurance and things of that nature. So yeah, we look at all of those things, and income, it needs to be at least 3 times the monthly rent. And then we look at debt to income ratio as well. And are there any other large expenditures that they have, such as a car?